Hey, good morning. It's a Saturday, and we're on the boat. We're gonna have to talk about the realities of having a dog on the boat with us. So, should we talk about that? All right, well, what usually happens is about 6:30 in the morning I wake up and there's a dog on my bed, perched like a vulture, her nose about a half an inch from my nose, as she telepathically sends me the command, "Wake up, wake up, wake up, I have to pee." The stroll down the dock is like her morning buffet. She snaps up all the claws and shells and so forth that the seagulls left from the night before and gobbles them down. A quick stop at the dog watering dish to wash it all down, and off we go. Now, it just does seem to me that she acts like in the morning when the dew is on everything and everything's a little bit wet, that all the smells are just that much more interesting than they were the night before on this same exact stretch of road that we walked on. And again, I have to kind of keep an eye on her, because if she smells it and it smells interesting, it goes down the hatch and she eats it. This little grassy area at the marina, unfortunately, there's a sign on the other side of it that says it's soon going to be turned into a restaurant, which will be really pretty unfortunate because it does seem like this is one of the favorite places for all the dogs. It's kind of surrounded by bushes on most sides, and there's a lot of rabbits that hang out in here, little bunny rabbits, so there's plenty of interesting smells. And sometimes there's something stinky to roll in. And other times, for no apparent reason, this will just make a dog go bonkers. There's another interesting phenomenon. As we come to where the boatyard is, there's a portion of it that is this wooden decking. And again, for some reason, this wood part just makes the dog lose her mind for a minute. And she'll jump around and grab her leash, and lots of times she gets it all tangled up around her own legs. We have this little fit of craziness, and literally the minute she walks back onto the concrete, it flips off like a light switch. So that whole round trip is all that it is involved in just getting our first morning potty break done. And when we're on anchor or on a mooring ball, we're going to have to put her in the dinghy to accomplish this same episode. So we will see how that goes. I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we'll have to work it out, I guess. All right, are you ready for an update on the bilge project here? I'm ready to give you one. So let's go down in the engine compartment, engine room. It's not a room. I've been on my prayer bones. It's not a room. It's a crawl space. But let's go have a look what we got here. So what you're seeing standing up here in the back is the panel that lays over this opening right here. And a couple things to make note of. Well, first of all, let's start with the new pump. So, brand new pump, brand new float switch. The pump is mounted to that piece of fiberglass that runs across there. The float switch is mounted here. The float switch is not low enough to run the pump dry and or really dry the bilge out, but it should keep us from sinking if water starts coming in from the outside world out there. Sorry, I bumped the camera. This sump right here, the sump box, is for the drain out of the forward head in the shower drain. So that will drain in this hose, and then that hose goes out to a through hole over there. There's two of them, one for the bilge pump, one for that pump. I have wired that pump up here. I've taken the lid off, lifted the switch, made sure it worked. Now, a couple things to note. I have a drip out of that thing. That is, this plumbing right here is all the plumbing for the diesel heating system, and that fitting is dripping. And somewhere down here, I've got a drip. Now, it might be out of this hose right here, so I stuck a paper towel right there, and I've wrapped some oil absorbent rags around it down there, and I've cut some of the zip ties on some of these electrical cables, but I'm gonna definitely have to figure out what's leaking there. All of these leaks seem to be coming from our diesel heating system, but I'm gonna back out of here. But it seems like what it is it's a little bit of that ethylene glycol is dripping, melting, or not melting, but leaking. That's the word we're shooting for. And that's not cool. So, but what I was doing, was I was laying on my belly on that back panel and hanging my head over into that compartment for like 2 hours to get that thing, all that shelf put back in and the box mounted and all that. I'm tired of working in the engine compartment. So I'm going to do a little cleanup and bring out the vacuum that I got down in there, my shop vac. It's got some nasty water in it. I've got a bucket that's got some nasty water in it. And there was an extra battery box that was down below, down in that compartment down there, where you can't really see all that well, but way down on that shelf, there was an unused battery box there that has a bunch of quarts of oil in it and just random stuff like that. So I'll situate that somewhere else or eliminate it. And I'm gonna pop the top on my house bank of batteries, because I've been talking to the guy about that stern thruster, and his initial quote came back with a whole new set of batteries for the thruster all by itself. And we were talking about maybe tapping into the house bank, and if not, then I'm going to get him some pictures of the closets back in the master stateroom. We might put batteries in there, although that thing added up pretty darn quick, man. It got expensive, so I'm having to chew on that one a little bit. But honestly, here's my theory. Okay, this is going to be my house forever. Once I get rid of the business and get rid of the house in Salt Lake, this is going to be my forever home, or at least until I decide either I hate it to be floating around or I need a sailboat to go across oceans. But for, let's say 10 years, I'm going to be living on this thing, and I can't expect to be not going places because I'm afraid of going out alone and afraid of docking alone. So probably the money spent on a stern thruster is, even though it's a fair amount of money, is probably money well spent, because that's one of the stressful moments of boating, is coming in and out of a dock. And I'm sure I'm going to be fine like 90% of the time, but on that one stormy, windy day when I'm really fighting a cross breeze, if I got a couple of, and we're talking about putting 2 thrusters back there to give us plenty of oomph, if I've got that power to really move this thing sideways if I need to, it's probably going to be money well spent. And that one day I probably won't complain at all about spending that amount of money. So I got to get some pictures for Rick, and Rich. I can't remember right now, but anyway, you don't care what his name is. So a little cleanup to do. I got tools laying all over the place. This is kind of the reality of working on the boat. You know, you take over your living space, you get your tools out, you do your work, and then you got to put everything away, and still got, you know, you still got to do dishes and cook yourself some lunch and breakfast and all that stuff. So I'll do all that, and then I'll give you an update on what's next. Maybe starting into some woodwork around those panels that hold the stereo and everything in place on that header board up there. Well, they say location is everything, right? I have a great one. I'm right at the mouth of the sort of, I call it the bay inside of the marina here, or the big open space. So this is where the big boats come in and berth over to the right there. There's a great big Nordhaven, and then this boat that's pulling out right now is named the Blue Peter, and it is an old kind of classic tour boat or whatever. I'm not sure what you want to call it, but every time this thing goes out, I love to just watch it take its time. The guy that drives it seems to be a master at backing it out, spinning it around, and heading her out of the marina, and then he comes back in and parks it without any effort at all. So definitely knows how to drive this thing, and it is a beautiful old boat. And while we're on the topic of location and boats, Gray and I hopped on the ferry and went over to San Juan Island. And if you haven't checked out any of my ferry videos, I've got 2 different videos that I've put up of going to Alaska up the Inside Passage on the ferries. And I always tell the girls, when I get older, if I go missing, you know, don't put out a silver alert on the freeways for me. Just start to check the ferry system, because I'll probably be riding a ferry somewhere. So this was the ferry over to San Juan Island and pulls into Friday Harbor here. Okay, just a bit of travel information. So as you go to get on the ferry, you're going to the town of Anacortes. Anacortes is quite close to Deception Pass. We're driving across the Deception Pass bridge right now. It's 150 feet or something like that above the water, and I think the pass is like 600 feet wide. So when the tide's flowing in and out, there's a really strong current through this thing. It looks almost like a river. I didn't get to visit this while Gray was with me, but Lilu and I went back the following weekend to see what was all about and get out and do a little hiking. So it happened to be the free state park day. So it didn't cost the normal, I think it's like $10 for a day pass to get into Deception Pass State Park, which is where we're at right now as we're hiking down to the beach, or back from down to the beach. And so we got in there for free, but there were a million people around, so we didn't stick around there too long. And instead, we found this little trail up above, outside of the state park, kind of on the road going from the Deception Pass Highway back north, a little 2-lane back up to Anacortes. There was this kind of headlands state park with this little trail on it. And gosh, I don't think I'll ever get tired of hiking through the Pacific Northwest rainforest territory, and the dog seems to like it too. It's nice and cool and shady and plenty of interesting smells. When I was young and Star Wars had just come out, I was obsessed with Star Wars, and I watched everything I could find about it. And there was the making of Star Wars where they showed how they took a camera and they walked through, I think, the redwood forest or something, but they would walk through the forest with the camera on the Steadicam, not like I'm walking through this one, because this was decidedly not a Steadicam. This is just me holding the GoPro in my hand, but they walked through and shot the footage, and then they would speed it up a little bit And that's how they made those scenes and made it look like the speeder was, flying really fast through the forest. So that always comes to mind when I'm walking around through forests like this or these trees. I just imagine those guys back in the day making that movie, with not much of a budget at the time, and nobody really knew whether or not it was going to be a popular movie or not. And they were out walking around in the forest shooting footage, and people probably thought they were a little bit crazy, but boy, did it turn out. So we finished off the day with a visit to LaConner. And LaConner has kind of an old historic waterfront street, but it's also got this cool bridge that goes over the inlet into LaConner Bay there. And this is a shot of it through the trees, and then there's a park where you can go down below it and see the full thing. So that was about it for this trip, and then we headed home.